Well, I just want to thank you so much, Robbie Dunton, for giving us this interview. I think a lot of people in Latin America are curious to know a little bit of the history of the EMDR Institute, and also a chance to get to know you better. You know, very few people get an opportunity to meet you personally. Not everybody can go to the States to the EMDR conferences and things like that. So I thought we could start by having you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, you know, how your career developed in your professional career and how you connected with EMDR.
Okay, well, I am Robbie Dunton, and I am the administrative director of the EMDR Institute in California. And this is an institute, this is Dr. Francine Shapiro's institute, and we have always been business partners in the institute. And she was the one that would go out and do the conferences and do the trainings, and I was the arm that implemented what we were going to do and got the training scheduled and marketing and that kind of thing. So that's still my role. And then when we first started EMDR over 30 years ago, we didn't have a facilitator staff yet. And I had come from and said, wow, we really need to have a facilitator staff, because in those early days, it was a short training and it was mostly lecture and that kind of thing. And then over time, it just developed. So I said, we need to have a strong facilitator staff when we're working with these people. So that was my main role too. And actually, I trained the facilitators and brought them along. And so this started a long time ago. Francine and I have been friends for over 30 years, probably 35 years. And I first met her because I was the associate director of an institute that worked with children and adults who had learning differences. In those days, we called them learning disabilities, but now the political correct term is learning differences. So we had a lot of kids that and adults with ADHD and behavior problems, reactive disorder problems, you know, who had been thrown out of schools multiple times. That's what I did before. And I have a master's in educational counseling and also nutritional counseling. And so I was taking a graduate course class at the university, and Francine was the instructor on a course on communication. And what I was doing in that course, and the director and we took some of our teachers with us, we wanted to be able to have our teachers be able to communicate better, particularly with the parents, because often in that situation, the parents, there were multiple traumas going on in those families with these kids who couldn't concentrate. You know, in those days, they were very quick to give Ritalin to these children. And what I found out working with these children, that a lot of them, they didn't have ADHD. They had trauma in their backgrounds, and this is why they were unable to function in school. So I wanted to take this course from Francine, and I was so impressed, we all were, with her, not only her ability to articulate what we were looking for, but she just had this presence. And so what I did was I organized workshops at our institute to bring her in to talk with the teachers and the parents and give these workshops that were, you know, transferring the knowledge she was giving us in the course. And it was just so impressive. So what happened at this time, she was in her doctoral program, and this is when she discovered EMDR. And in those days, as you know, it was called EMD. Mm-hmm. And this was in the late 1980s. And so so our friendship sort of blossomed then, and we would get together all the time. And when I brought her in to do these workshops for particularly our parents, we had one parent, her name is Pat Riley, and I used to always call her the mother of EMDR, because she was the one that really started Francine, pushed Francine to say, look, this, you're developing these things, you need to get them out in the world. And so Pat was very instrumental. And so during this, Francine did the walk in the park, actually. It was true. And I know the park very well. I used to walk there every day myself. And that's where she finally found EMDR. It came to her. And so then I remember the first time she introduced me to EMDR, and we were out at dinner. And because we used to try to get together for dinner at least once a week, just to talk about the communication skills and how they were transformed with the teachers in our program. And so she goes, well, will you do something for me? And I go, sure, yeah, well, okay. She goes, was there anything this week that you can remember that was kind of anxiety producing or upsetting for you, anything like that? and I said, I don't know, I can't think of something. She goes, well, think of something. so I thought of something, and I don't remember what it was. And so then she said, well, okay, now can you watch my fingers and move your eyes? And then she asked me some questions and everything. And that was my first introduction to EMDR. And now, by then, of course, it wasn't out. She hadn't really written the protocols or anything. But I was so struck by what it could do that I just immediately embraced the whole idea. And that was when she was doing her studies with the Vietnam veterans who were out in the brush up in California. I mean, they camped out up there, and there was an agency up there that the therapists got these men to come in and do the EMDR therapy. Wow. And that's how she got that first study, and then did another study with abuse, mainly abused women. So that's what got it off the ground. And it just, it was a mom and pop in the beginning. You know what that is.
Yeah, very simple. And then slowly it became the Institute.
I'm sorry?
Slowly it became the Institute.
Well, for a while, we didn't really get incorporated right away. We just, as I said, worked really hard to get it out there in the field. And Francine, I mean, I have to give her all the credit, because she applied and did many, many, many conference workshops. And then she got her article out there in 1989, but then, as you remember, it was called EMD.
Right.
And it wasn't until later that she added the reprocessing, which of course we all know is essential. And so that's how we met, and that's how it all started. And then I was actually at that time also in graduate school, and so together we just, with the help of AJ, we just put it together. That's how it happened. Yeah.
All right. So then there was a time when she started training people. I ran into somebody a few months ago when I was in Los Angeles, an older gentleman named John, and I'm not going to remember his last name, who said he had been at the very, very first workshop that Francine had ever done. I think it was like January of 90 or 91.
Yeah, probably.
In training.
Yeah, actually, he probably wasn't the first one, because I think we actually did some things. She actually first did the first one in Israel, I believe. She had a trip to Israel, and she was going to work with the therapist who worked with the army, I believe. I think that's where one was. And then we started doing small ones for the Mental Research Institute in Palo Alto. Was he maybe a part of that? That might be. And then the two of us would travel. We did a lot of trainings with universities, and we'd have small groups, and we would travel around the country and do that. And then, yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so eventually she did begin giving trainings, public trainings.
Yes.
And because I did mine I began my level 1 in 1996 in Denver. By then, the Institute existed, and there were regular trainings that y'all were offering.
Yeah, we actually started doing, I think the first ones like in 1989, and then we did more and more trainings around the world. And the fact that two of us were, and we took sometimes a team with us, were traveling around the world. I was pretty much out of the office 3 weeks out of the month, trying to do it all. It was a lot of work. That's why we finally decided we need to get more trainers, more facilitators, more logistics, and here we are now. So we're all over the world. It's pretty exciting.
It is very exciting, I know what kind of work goes into expanding a community, because we did a lot of this in Brazil and Latin America. So I can imagine what this was like, breaking rock from scratch, in the 90s.
I think what happened also then was that the articles were published. Francine wrote more articles and did more conference presentations. That's essential. People call me all the time. I have people with other treatment modalities calling me and asking me, how did you do this? How did you get EMDR to be all over the world and set up institutes all over? And I said, well, Francine, she did the legwork. She did every conference presentation and published in different journals, peer-reviewed journals, which of course today is still what we're begging people to do. Yes, you may have developed a new protocol, or yes, you're seeing it work really well with this population. However, without peer-reviewed journal articles to support that, it doesn't mean much. So those were starting to come out, and so people from like Europe, I remember you probably don't know him, but John Spector from England and Ott de Jong from the Netherlands. And Arne Hoffman from Germany came over and took the trainings in the United States and said, wow, we want to do this in our country. And so they invited us to their countries to do it. So that's how it started to spread. And I think you came and did it in Denver, and then met John Hartung, who of course really the two of you brought EMDR to Latin America. And that's what happened. And I think the treatment protocol are what make the difference. People see that they really do help their client, and that's the
I did my first session of EMDR in 1995, and I walked out of my first session and I said, this is amazing, I have got to learn how to do this. And I came home and I told my husband, I've got to be trained in this thing, and if we get to go back to Ecuador, I'm going to take this and get people trained in Ecuador. And we did eventually. I did this level 1 in 96, level 2 in 97. In 97, I did it with Francine herself, because back then she was the only one who taught level 2. And and then in 98, my husband was transferred to Ecuador, and in 99, I took John Hartung to start training us in Ecuador, and we started this, the training programs in Ecuador itself. So
what I should get from you is, if you can write down some of your history, I'll add it to my history, because I've been trying to keep a history. Actually, I've sort of let it go the last 2 years, because everything's all over so much. It's not all being generated from the Institute anymore. So if you send me that information, that'd be helpful.
Sure. I'd be honored to do that. Yeah. So when the Institute began, and how did the Institute and how did EMDRIA come about?
Well, before EMDRIA came about, we started EMDR HAP, which is now Trauma Recovery EMDR, Humanitarian Assistance Programs. We started that first. That was in like 1994. And that was in response to the
Oklahoma bombing.
Oklahoma bombing. Thank you. And actually, Sandra Wilson is the one that really put that project together with Judy Albert. And as you know, she's gone now, and Judy is, I think, retired. Anyway, they were the ones that got us going, but the Institute implemented this response for first responders to the Oklahoma City and also to families of many of the victims. And that's what started HAP. And then it just grew from there. And now it's a full-blown organization. I'm still on the board. I've been on the board from day one. And somehow retiring from that just hasn't happened yet. In fact, we have 2 face-to-face meetings a year, and next week I'm leaving for Washington, D.C. We are having our face-to-face meeting, mid-year face-to-face meeting, and all the people on the board are also meeting with their state legislatures. To tell them about EMDR, because PTSD and opioid problems are such huge issues here, and with the military and so forth. So I'm kind of excited about that, because our Senator Feinstein isn't meeting with me, but I am meeting with her mental health legislative assistant. So that's next week.
That is exciting.
Yeah. So in 1995. Somebody came to us and said, we need to have, and it's getting so big, we need to have an EMDR EMDR association. But prior to that, we started having conferences, I think in about 92 or something. And the Institute did the conferences where we brought people together, and it was wonderful. I always call it the first one's Love Fest, because everybody was so excited about EMDR, and people came from all over the world to our first conferences, and everybody was hugging. They were just felt like they had finally found something that really, really was helping their clients, and gave them such what I call a shot in the arm, because I don't know about you, but when I was working with kids and these people, I needed something like this, because I've been having success with what I was doing, but this just was another dimension that I found, particularly the kid clients were all really comfortable with EMDR therapy. And so it was an exciting time. And then so we were doing the conferences, and we were trying to do HAP and trying to do everything. And somebody said, you can't do it all, and you need to have an EMDR association, because now there's people from all over the world, and we need to get things standardized and so on and so forth. So that's what happened, and we started that in 1995, and it became called the EMDR International Association, because we had thought that, I think a little bit naively thought, that people from all the world would want to be a part of that. And as it turned out, people in other countries wanted to have their own association, which I think is fine. It wasn't that we were trying to insist everybody come to America and be a part of it. We just for us, it was the first step. And then everything began to branch out from there. I mean, the ripple kept getting bigger and bigger. And as you know, now we have associations all over the world that are functioning, with hopefully having standards that are appropriate for each country.
Yes. Do you remember when EMDR Europe, how that came about?
Yeah, I do. Exactly. Yes, we had a contingent from several countries met us at the conference, and when they came to the United States for the conference. and said, we would like to have an EMDR Europe association. And we said, okay. I mean, at that time, a lot of them, the EMDR US International Association, I don't know how to say that, EMDR US, had a big board, and it included people from other countries.
Mm.
It did. And so those people, many of them came together and met with me and Francine, not with the EMDR board, but with me and Francine, and said, we want to have our own EMDR Europe Association.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, well, okay, only, talk to EMDR about it. So it was another step. And it sometimes when you take steps, you bumps in the road. But those got ironed out, and now I think they sort of became the model for how other associations could start. And
yes. In fact, when we started EMDR Iberoamerica, that was founded, we did that in 2007. Mm-hmm. A lot of how we thought about putting together Latin America, Iberoamerica, was modeled on how Europe did it, because Europe is an association of associations, whereas EMDR is, we consider it a regional association because of its importance, but more of a national organization, since it basically gives the rules for the United States, although people from around the world are members of it, both individuals and associations. But I think it's important for people to understand the difference between the Institute and EMDR. What does each one do? What's the objective or the goal of each one?
Well, I mean, it does get confusing, though, and yes. Because we started it, Francine and I started EMDR, and with the intention of having an association that would take over the conference and would set standards for people, not just the U.S., for people around the world, but we would be informed by people around the world. And when we started EMDR, before EMDR was ever started, our goal was, when we went to countries, was to have within 2 years a training team in that country that could teach in that language. So that's when Arne Hoffman and different people in Europe got trained, and it was before EMDR. And I think that's happened around the world. I mean, John and you got it going, and because we didn't speak Spanish, so we were happy to have somebody from the U.S. that could do this, bring it to the Latin countries. And of course, you're in Portugal, where they also speak Portuguese. So that's, again, something, having you come on board was really wonderful. So that's how it started. And in the Europe, as you know, so anyway, that's how it started. And it's just grown and grown and grown. And I what I love is that we have around the world wonderful training teams who all have the same goal, to bring EMDR to clinicians in their country. And because they know how wonderful the method is for healing their clients.
When we founded EMDR IBA in 2007, I was the first president for the first 2 terms. Right. And it was a lot of work to start it from scratch. And so we have 19 countries who speak Spanish, plus Brazil. Brazil is the giant on the continent, and Portuguese speaking, of course. And we hope that, Portugal and Spain would join. Portugal was with us for a while. They kind of go back and forth. Spain never joined. And my goal was, and continues to be, I think, a goal for, the present president, who's Sylvia Boos, is to have a national trainer in each country. And so we
what does that mean, a national
That
trainer?
means having like a Mexican trainer in Mexico, a Bolivian trainer in Bolivia, a Brazilian trainer in Brazil, because it's so expensive to go from one country to another.
Right.
You know, and the idea is multiplication, which is, you know, what I really worked hard at, is to be able to get an association formed in each country, as
Right.
well as, you know, with the goal of also having, you know, a national trainer, in the
Right.
sense of a native trainer in each, at least one, who could
Yeah.
speak the language, who understands the
Right.
local customs and things like that. So we've come a long way. We've come a really long way, but we still have a few countries where we don't have a trainer yet.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully in the next few years we'll be able to do that. And with the, you know, with a group that has formed, you know, the committee for EMDR Global Alliance, you know.
Well, that's my dream, is to see the Global Alliance become a really significant factor in what's happening with the EMDR community around the world. I know it seems to not quite be getting off the ground because they're still looking at policies and so forth. But I think what the Global Alliance could do is to have a broad standard, a standard that's for everybody, but of course with flexibility per country, because I think the licensing or the evaluate, whatever you call it, in certification in each country is very different.
Yes.
But yeah, but that was our goal all along. And what I would love to see, I'd love to see out of the Global Alliance is someday that we have a truly international conference. And maybe it would be something that that year, that, you know, it would be something we'd have to plan ahead. But I've kind of been wanting to do this for years, is that each association would say, okay, in 2021, we're not going to have our own conference. Everybody's going to have this international conference.
What a wonderful idea.
I would like to see that happen, because I think that it would be a way, and of course now with streaming, people from all over the world can get more information quickly and not have to actually be there. But pick a place and then everybody commit to doing that, which means they'd have to put some funds into making it happen. But I think it would be such an amazing experience. And well, like, you know, the Milton Erickson conference, I don't know if you've ever been to it, but they have one conference with people coming from all over the world, and they have like 10,000, 11,000 people that attend.
Wow.
But there's something about that, if we're really talking about getting a universal standard for EMDR treatment or EMDR trainings, both of the above, then to have that kind of energy at a conference, and it could be a place where we get a panel and have somebody from each association be on that panel and with the Global Alliance, and say, how can we do this? Let's talk about standards. Let's develop some international policies around it. That's,
I think I sit on the Global Alliance committee, and I think we've made a lot of progress especially in the last couple of months, about establishing minimum standards. You know, there are things about licensing and certification that have to be done locally. But I think as far as minimum standards, I think this has really come a long way, which is the whole point of, you know, minimum standards and mutual recognition. I think those are the two goals.
I think that's important. And then I hope there's something, because I haven't had any update from the Global Alliance in forever. So I don't know what you're all doing, but I just think that along with that, there has to be something called mutual respect. And because I know if you start saying, look, these people are approved by I don't know if you're going to do an approval process or if you're just setting standards. So let's say, for instance, a trainer from Spain wants to come into Mexico to do a training. Is that going to be acceptable? And is there some kind of process or a way to keep the respect so that the person that's in a particular country, for instance, in Mexico, where we already have a trainer, is he going to be accepting of this other training?
And I mean, we've worked a lot on those issues. You know, we learned a lot of those difficulties you know,
Yeah.
how to make, and we do have procedures in place, and they're more and more developed. And it's a matter of, you know, being able, since we work with consensus, you know, because everybody has to submit to the rules. So it's not a matter of you can vote and then people who are minority have to submit. It doesn't work that way. So it moves slowly because we do work on a consensus basis, and where everybody has to come to an agreement. And more we have been able to reach agreements. And there's a lot of procedures already in place. We're hoping to get the website out, you know, pretty soon. They've really worked hard on this, and to be able to put the initial minimum standards and then the procedures on how we can have the mutual recognition. I think mutual recognition for basic training I think that's not going to be a big difficulty. I think it's, you know, how to recognize approved consultants, supervisors, how to recognize trainers to make sure everybody has a minimum, you know, standard as far as, you know, preparation is concerned. I think that's a bigger concern, but I think we've made a lot of progress. It just hasn't gone real public because it has to be kind of agreed upon.
Sure.
And so every once in a while we think we've got the whole thing worked out, and then whoops, we got another glitch. So let's back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Well, is one of the first procedures for that to be standards for trainers? Or is it going to be just a standard for training? Well, we don't have to discuss that all here. I'll wait until you all send me something.
All righty.
Okay.
Would you like to send a message to our folks here in Latin America before we say goodbye?
Oh, yes, I would, for sure. I can say that one of the peak experiences in my life and Francine's life, and especially since we've been in the EMDR community, was attending the Costa Rica conference. And it was, I can't tell you how pleased we were, and the enthusiasm of all the people who were attending. I mean, I don't know if all the Latin clinicians are always that positive and happy and bringing so much joy, that we just felt like what you're doing is so stellar, and we just came away from there feeling pumped up. It was really wonderful. We loved it, and we felt like everybody that we met there, and I can't remember how many people were there, but there were a lot. And you had translation in Spanish, you had translation in Portuguese, and then we had these wonderful translators who were translating everything to us in English, which was very impressive, by the way. And we just came away from there just feeling this sense of gratitude and appreciation for what you are doing in Latin America. And I know there's a lot of countries there that are underserved type of, and a lot of trauma in those communities, and yet economically they don't have the funds. And I know that you've, I think, brought it to some of the countries that are in that situation, and it just warmed our hearts. Truly, Francine and I talk about being there often, and what a wonderful experience it was. So we thank you for that. And
thank you so much. That's very touching, because it was when I turned over my term as president, and it was a very satisfying feeling of mission accomplished. But it was especially nice to have you guys there to see what obviously I didn't do this by myself. There's a whole team, there's a whole lot of people who contributed, but it was also very, very impressive, very fulfilling to have. I'll see that.
And that's what I think we appreciate, is the professionalism that you brought to the conference, and the high standards that you have in those countries, and the high standard of training you have for the trainers and the facilitators. It all was apparent to us, and the presentations were absolutely wonderful. I mean, it was all just very special for us, and it gave us an insight into what's happening. And I think also at that time, in Costa Rica, I think there was a solidarity there.
Yes.
And about the standards and so forth. And I hope that still is there, because I think that's one of the things that impressed us most, was that everybody was on the same page as far as what should the standards be. And of course, again, the licensure in the different countries is going to be, you know, specific to that country. But I think the overall value and the presentation and the articulation of the training, you guys all agree. And that's really wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, we do have a lot of consensus on that. Well, thank you so much, Robbie. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share with us and helping us all understand a little bit more about the history. I think it's important to have these stories, you know. I think life is made of these stories. So I appreciate your time.
I could spend 2 days giving you the history. They asked me to do it. They asked me to do it at HAP, and it just went on, and they finally said, "Oh, we got to stop because we've run out of time for the day." But there's just so many stories, wonderful stories.
Well, I am so glad to hear that they are getting them taped and recorded, because these stories are important. And I really appreciate you sharing with our folks here in Latin America.